Welcome to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. We believe life is about how we react. Hey, thanks for listening. Today, I'm glad you are here. Over the years, Kyle and I have been asked about the highlights of hosting this show, and you're about to hear an example of the best parts of what we do here, our live and sometimes virtual forums. We've been privileged to meet so many people and organizations in the broader community of rare disease. And we've been honored to be a part of conferences and seminars that help us understand what others are doing on a daily basis to help those in the rare disease world. The National Taysachs and Allied Diseases Association, otherwise known as NTSAD, are leading the worldwide fight to treat and cure Taysachs, Canavan, GM1, and Sandhoff diseases by driving research, forging collaboration, and fostering community. Supporting families is the center of everything they do. Early on in the recording you're about to hear, you'll hear me reference a video that beautifully captures the work and some stories of the NTSAD family. This and other resources are linked in our show notes and worth a few minutes of your time. We were touched by the conversations, and we believe our lives have been made better just from this brief experience. We are sure you'll agree. Here is our 2DD forum conversation with Staci, Sarah, and Kevin at the 2021 NTSAD Family Conference.
And now it's my pleasure to introduce Sean Baumstark and Kyle Bryant. Sean and Kyle are beloved members of the greater rare disease community, and together they tackle misconceptions and address topics that affect all of us in their funny, endearing, and always heartfelt way on their popular podcast, Two Disabled Dudes. Sean and Kyle, I thank you for joining us, and please take it away.
Thank you for having us. It's an honor to be here, and I am moved by the video. I am paraphrasing, but somebody said, meeting people that get you. And Kyle and I live with the disease as well, different than Taysachs or the others in the group here. But there is something about not having to explain yourself, not having to explain the pain or the grief or the hardships or the frustrations or the silly nuances, because there's a bunch of people that just get it. We're honored to be a part of your global legacy today.
I love the theme of heart to heart, home to home, and I am so glad to be heart to heart with all of you guys. Thanks so much for having us. It is wonderful to be a part of your community today. When I was 17, I was diagnosed with Friedreich's ataxia, and my family and I looked online like many of you did when you were diagnosed, and we found out that it would only be a matter of time before I'm in a wheelchair, before I would lose all ability to take care of myself, and I would likely die a premature death due to heart disease. So I lived with those facts for a few years. In 2007, I went on a bike ride with my dad from San Diego to Memphis, Tennessee, to raise awareness and to raise funds for research. And we had an amazing journey, and we raised a little money. Now I find myself on staff at the Friedreich's Ataxia Research Alliance, and we produce a nationwide series of bike rides that raises funds for research. In 2010, Sean and I did Race Across America. It's known as the world's toughest bike race. and we rode from San Diego to Annapolis, Maryland, and we finished in less than 9 days.
With that bike race or race across America, we had a film crew tag along with us and produce an amazing, or, maybe I'm biased, but a beautiful documentary on living with Friedreich's ataxia. And after that film was produced, it circulated for a couple of years. Kyle, both him and I shared this notion that, man, we should continue the conversation because much like the message of NTSAD, there's power in just connecting with other people and talking about what you're going through. And we wanted to continue the conversation on the principles that were really drawn out in that film. I was diagnosed with FA, late onset for me as well, but had the same sort of challenges that Kyle had. It was doom and gloom. There wasn't a lot going on. In fact, doctors didn't even really know much about FA, at least not the doctor I was in front of. So, of course, like most of us, probably we go to the internet and we discover, holy cow, this is bad. And while I was on the internet, I discovered Kyle's name because we're the same age. We lived in the same city at that time. And so I was like, why is my local news talking about this random guy? Come to find out, we had very similar stories. So I hunted him down on Facebook, I believe, and we became friends. And in fact, I kind of forced him. I said, hey, you're my new best friend. I was diagnosed with this same condition. Help me out. What am I up against? And from then on, Kyle and I have been partnered in so many different journeys and efforts and projects along the way. Bike riding and podcasting are just a couple of the things that we do together to help call attention to the world of rare disease and encouraging people to live beyond their circumstances.
Today, we've joined you and a few of your community members to share a few perspectives. We love interacting with other communities and understanding the struggles that other people go through in an effort to encourage new members or just peers to tackle the challenges that these conditions throw our way. So we welcome with us Staci and Sarah and Kevin. Thank you guys so much for joining us. And you know what, Staci, we wanted to first ask you, why did you choose the medical field? We know you're a physician. Why did you choose that field?
So it's a good question, and I'll answer it in a minute. But first, I just have to sort of comment on Kyle's statement. I went on a bike ride with my dad, which, makes me think I go on a bike ride sometimes a few miles around the city, except Kyle says, I went on a bike ride from San Diego to Memphis. Like, that's just a thing people do, right? Halfway across the country. So I just thought that needed to be highlighted a little bit. But so why did I choose the medical field? I would say as a kid, I was really interested in a lot of things, but even by, middle school age, I realized I was most interested in science and was kind of heading in this direction. And I'd been aware of my family's involvement with NTSAD, had been involved myself in local fundraising activities from really a very young age. I remember my mom, this one weekend every year, she would go away without the family because she was going to the NTSAD conference. But once my mom really told me details about our family's history, how she and my dad had learned that they were both Taysachs carriers, what this meant for them and their efforts to build a healthy family. And then I really learned more about genetic diseases and learned about patterns of inheritance. And I learned those initially from NTSAD brochures. I was really hooked. And so I thought for a long time I would go into research, but realized when I was in college that lab, bench work wasn't for me, and pivoted and applied to medical school instead. And I went to medical school really interested in genetics, but kind of fought my destiny for a long time. Wanted to make sure I was really choosing this because it was what was right for me and not what my mom thought was great or what some people in NTSAD, say Kevin included, told me would be fantastic for everybody. So I waited and went, through medical school. But by the time I started even my pediatrics training, I knew that, there was no place for me besides medical genetics.
in the rare disease community and in all communities, we take these challenges and turn them into purpose. And Staci, that's what you did, and I really, really appreciate that.
Sarah, would you mind telling the audience a little bit about yourself? Who are you and what brings you to the panel today?
So I was first introduced to NTSAD back in 2015 when our son Joey was diagnosed with infantile GM1. And this community was a lifeline to our family back then and really continues to be a strong pillar of both inspiration and support. Joey died in 2017, and staying involved and now serving on the board has just been a great outlet. I feel like I'm doing better when I'm connected with Joey's friends and their families. My husband and I also run a nonprofit called Be Brave Foundation, and our mission really is to improve the lives of children and families affected by rare neurological disorders.
How, with these challenges that are presented by the NTSAD community that you guys are in, how do you manage hope from one day to the next in the midst of this certain and significant change?
I think we all have different definitions of hope depending on where we are in our journey and in life. And the good thing about hope is that it can be redefined along the way. Sometimes it's a strong, motivating force, and sometimes it's that quiet little voice that tells you to try again. And sometimes, no matter how hard you try, you just can't find it. I certainly have those days. I've had a couple of those days this past year. And I think that's okay. I think it's okay as long as we don't forget to try again tomorrow. And maybe tomorrow you'll get that smile or a little smirk from your child that you thought you wouldn't see again, or someone drops off a meal, or if you live in Ohio and you haven't seen the sun in 5 months, that makes a big difference. So for me personally, I think connection and community really serve as the anchor, especially during uncertain times. I think hope is contagious. I think it can be magnified through connection. And when I'm blinded by my own circumstances, I think just connecting with other people, hearing their stories, witnessing their resilience, their relentless love for their children, and just how they all make the world a better place, that brings me hope.
That's beautiful. Thank you, Sarah. Kevin, maybe we'll give you the floor to say a little bit about yourself now you're involved.
Thank you. And of course, I would like to start by saying that I'm Matthew Romer's dad. Matthew was diagnosed with Taysachs disease in 1995. It was Thanksgiving of 1995, and he died just before his 8th birthday in 2003. I've also had the pleasure of being the NTSAD past president and first chairman of the research initiative a long time ago. In parallel with that, Lisa Jane, my wife, and I co-founded the Matthew Forbes Romer Foundation, and we became the Florida affiliate of National Taysachs. So it's been a wonderful partnership from our onset.
As you find yourself in this community, how has this disease affected your relationships with your family or with your friends or whoever it is in your life? What challenges has the situation presented, and how have you approached them?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, I mentioned about Matthew being diagnosed over Thanksgiving. Thanksgiving has always been a special time for our family. Families come together. Obviously, it's a little different now, but that time of year, it's one of my favorite holidays. Also, is my father's birthday. So it was always a happy, loving time. And when we got our diagnosis of Matthew over Thanksgiving, it literally hijacked the holiday away from us. We now couldn't have that same feeling around that time. And it put a tremendous amount of stress on our family because we were really concerned about, survival at that point. At the same time, how do we interact with different family members? Some of them more supportive than others, some of them more understanding. And so we really worked hard. But what I'm really proud of is that, we were able to come together as a family. It's so important to find your team and find your support group. And it really made us stronger. It made us appreciate the time together as a family better. And I'm proud to say we've captured the holiday of Thanksgiving back, and it continues to be a very special time for our family.
Kevin, you've heard me say this before as we were preparing, but I just love the way you talk about it. We captured it back because it's a very active way. It's not just going to happen. You've got to go out and get it for yourself and for your family. I love that.
Thank you.
Speaking of going out and getting it, I wanted to bring Staci back up to the spotlight. Staci, I would love to hear, as you and both Sue have alluded, and we all know last year was virtual. This year is off to a virtual start again, and we all have high hopes that things are going to start to change and somehow go back to a sense of normal at some point this year. I'm curious, from your perspective, over the last year, what have you observed as somebody that's connected, not necessarily personally, different than Kevin and Sarah? You don't have a child, but you're connected, obviously, deeply. What has inspired you or reminded you that virtual is okay, or whatever it takes to connect is valuable? What have you observed over the year?
What have I observed in the past year? Simple question about, just a year like any other, right?
Yeah.
Because it's been, probably the most unexpected year. When I thought about this and, it's trying to reflect back on the past year and think about really what we've all been through and what we're all going through, the word that came to my mind first and that Sarah's already mentioned really is resilience. I think, people have asked me many times about my experiences in the past year as a physician. But really as a geneticist, I've been lucky to be pretty well spared from, dealing with the day-to-day of the pandemic. So I've been, I worked at home and I've been seeing patients in the clinic, but I haven't been in the hospital taking care of people who are sick, and I haven't been working crazy shifts and wearing all the PPE and worried about becoming sick. So I've been very fortunate from that perspective. But personally, I've been really inspired by all of the positives that we've seen throughout this pandemic, by the change of shift clapping for healthcare workers who were coming home, and the tributes to, all of those who did have to work through the worst of this, by people sewing masks when we didn't have them. And really, and also by how quickly this group shifted, how quickly we shifted and made a virtual conference last year. This year we had a lot of time to think about it and plan for it, but last year it was rather unexpected. And we, our great staff and our families pulled together an amazing virtual conference in very little time. And when I think, of most, when I think about this community and the past year and how they're connected, I think that it's this ability to really appreciate the good and the beauty in these dark spaces, comes, for me, at least in part, from knowing this amazing group of people at NTSAD. I think that there's really beauty in knowing so many people who've been through what, has generally been described as the worst thing that you can go through, losing a child, or for some families, more than one child, or losing a partner, and seeing them and not just breathing, which really seems like an accomplishment in and of itself, but living and laughing and loving, sometimes growing their families further, sometimes starting foundations or raising money for research, honoring their loved ones by coming here and supporting others through the same experience, sometimes joining our board to help NTSAD give back to others, telling their stories, and really to see people just thrive. It's shown me how strong humans really are. And I, when you come to a lot of conferences and know a lot of our families, you hear people say frequently that they've heard comments from others that God must have chosen them for this path, or that their loved ones chose them for this because they're strong and they can handle it. And, our families respond that doesn't feel true to them, and that they've handled this, they say, not because they're special, although I think that they're all pretty special, but because they didn't have a choice, that this is the situation they were in, and they're resilient. They're living through and after Tay-Sachs disease and Sandhoff disease and Canavan disease or GM1 because it's their only option. And that's really helped me in my own life. It's helped me in the hard times to know that when life changes in unexpected ways, it goes on. And it's helped me in this past year as, I cope and we all cope with so much loss during the pandemic. I know that we all individually and as a global community can come through this and that we can thrive because I've seen it over and over again from this group of people.
Speaking of the resilience of the community, I think that is fostered by NTSAD. I think a lot of you probably recognize that. And so, Kevin, I wanted to ask you how NTSAD has impacted you in your life and your family over the years.
We remember our first conference, which was 24 years ago, like it was yesterday. And it was soon after we had gotten the diagnosis, Matthew. We were just overwhelmed and we truly needed a comprehensive set of support. And we basically came here to try to learn how to cope with the diagnosis. As we've talked about already, please reach out. Please, even though it's virtual, make as many connections as you can, because that was so valuable. These are lifelong connections that you're going to have. And there's also tactical connections because you're going to have a lot of questions. And there's so many people that are so able and interested in helping you through our network. Learned about important care plans. I mean, when you first get the diagnosis, you're hopeful that you have a treatment, but you know that really what you want to do is you want to enjoy that quality of life and maximize that quality of life with your child. And so it was incumbent upon us to understand what we can do to provide the best care possible. And there's so many different strategies that you'll learn. And then last, of course, and has the time changed, as Susan said, there's so many therapies now that are in the clinic. But back then, unfortunately, 24 years ago, there wasn't that same level of opportunity and hope. But that didn't matter because as early pioneers, as we saw it, that was an opportunity. And we saw this as a way to really get a clear picture of where do we stand and where can we really double down and make a difference as a community here to drive for those treatments. And of course, the hope that Sarah spoke about so eloquently. So very, very much indebted to National Taysachs and Allied Diseases, NTSAD, on a personal level and as a partner in the work that we do with our foundation.
Thank you, Kevin. So I want to throw a question your way. Staci mentioned probably one of the worst things in life to experience is the loss of a child or multiple children or a partner. And you mentioned that Joey had passed. And even in the video, so many people have been affected by such loss. Would you speak to some of the things that you and your husband or your family did in the midst of caring for Joey? How did you keep yourself healthy enough to care for your son?
As a parent and a caregiver, it's incredibly difficult to prioritize your own needs without feeling guilty. It can feel wrong to make self-care a priority when you have a child with complex medical needs and the whole family, including your extended family, is struggling as a result of a devastating diagnosis. For me and for our family, self-care meant lots and lots of therapy. My husband and I started seeing a counselor, and we enrolled our other son, David, in play therapy shortly after Joey's diagnosis. So therapy, exercise, spending time with family and friends, and allowing ourselves to have fun. Those were the big ones. In my experience, grief and anticipatory grief come with a very limited vocabulary. I had so many thoughts, I had so many big emotions, and I just needed something more than words to process the chaos in my mind and in my heart. So pushing myself hard physically or learning, breathing techniques sort of helped me process some of the things that I didn't find the words for. To my husband, Sam, a big part of coping and trying to heal was investing in our future relationship and the health of our future family unit. So in addition to hashing it out in therapy, because we both cope and grieve very differently, we made date night priority, and humor was a big part. We many bad, inappropriate death jokes, gallows humor certainly helped us cope and get through. But I think, obviously self-care looks very differently. It can be many, many different things. I don't know that bad jokes in therapy is the right answer for everybody, but I think when we practice self-care, we're also honoring the many different parts of who we are. As a mom and caregiver, I was, and I am, and I always will be more than just one thing. I wasn't just the mother of a terminally ill child or now a bereaved mom. I'm also a wife. I'm the mom of a healthy child. I'm a friend. I'm a daughter. I'm a coworker. And I have goals. I have dreams. But certainly Joey's diagnosis shattered many, if not all of those dreams. So now having to rebuild and reframe some of that and finding my new identity, if you will, is really hard work. So I think self-care really is an important tool, and perhaps even one of the reasons that I didn't completely lose myself in the process.
Beautiful. I do want to go off script here a little bit, Sarah. What is something you're most proud of when you think about that experience with Joey and his legacy? What is something that you walk away with knowing he made you a better mom, better sister, a better child, a better, all of those things you mentioned?
I think that he showed me that there is more to life. And again, life is not just one thing. I think it's easy to be so overwhelmed by the pain of losing a child. It can be overwhelming. But I don't know what I'm most proud of. Probably that I'm still here.
Beautiful. Thank you. I didn't imagine a better response. That's beautiful. Thank you for being open with us. Kevin, I want to throw it back to you. You've experienced similar loss in your life. I'm curious why you keep doing what you do, or maybe how.
When we were caring for Matthew would go between intensive care needs at home to the pediatric intensive care unit in a hospital. And every time we'd get there, the doctor would say, I don't think Matthew's going to leave this time. I think he should make final preparation. And we didn't listen to the doctor. We listened to Matthew. And Matthew several times would look the doctor in the eye and say, nah, you're wrong again, pal. We're going home and we're going back to that quality of life that we'd established. And that inspiration and that fight that Matthew had imposed upon us a responsibility to be as inspired and motivated to fight and develop his legacy. So 23 years ago, we started a foundation in his honor, Matthew Forbes Romer Foundation, became the Florida affiliate of National Taysachs and NTSAD. And we set out with a quest to address all the things that we saw were missing when Matthew was with us. There was no genetic screening programs that we could rely on. And now we're in our 30th program, and the number of diseases that we're able to screen for is unbelievable. There was no real care programs that we could rely on. Nursing was so instrumental in the needs of whether it was in a hospital or at home. And so we realized that nursing was so critical to having that supply for our family's needs. So we focused on nursing programs. And then finally, as we grew and we had the means, we worked together with the NTSAD organization to drive a research initiative so that when families come to the conference and ask what are the hopes and opportunities, that there would be a real pipeline. And so we're very proud of all the work that we've done to meet the needs of our region as well as on a national level. And equally as exciting is that we're so proud of Matthew and that this is really his legacy and his gift to all of the friends in this community that he has met along the way. So it's been truly a rewarding journey.
Thank you, Kevin. I think we're all in this, as you say, to make progress towards the goal, whether it honors your child, whether it's your effort that you're doing for you, for a friend. And along the way, we all have expectations, and they change over time, right? But we have expectations of the progress that is going to be made in whatever amount of time. And it's up to all of us, I think, to manage our own expectations and maybe help other people manage theirs as well. And so my next question goes to Staci. As a board member and as a leader of the NTSAD, do you have a few thoughts on managing expectations? How do you do it for yourself and for your friends in the community?
Thanks, Kyle. I think it's a really great question. And we've heard a lot about hope from Sarah and from Kevin and from others who spoke earlier today. And I do think that hope's partner, if you will, is our expectations. And we really need to sort of think about that. And, we talk a lot in the organization at NTSAD, we talk a lot at the board level, really about balancing hope with expectations. And I've often felt like I'm the expectations girl rather than the hope girl, especially when we talk about research and moving towards clinical trials. I see Kevin smirk because, Kevin and I think sometimes have been the yin and the yang of hope and expectations, or I think I said the other day, the angel and the devil on your shoulder. But I think that balance is really important. And, I think it's been important that we give realistic expectations. But to be honest, I think it's for me, at least partially, that I have had the luxury of being realistic. It's a luxury to hope and to drive research forward for the good of the community, rather than thinking about it for my specific child or for my partner. And I certainly can recognize that the disappointing setbacks and delays in advancements are more meaningful for those who are actively waiting for those potential therapies and trials as part of the community. So I think that it's important to manage expectations. I think at the same time, hope is super important. Hope keeps people going day to day, as you've heard. Hope has helped us raise a lot of money, which has really been instrumental in advancing the research towards the clinical trials. So I recognize that importance, and I feel personally for me that I have a responsibility, and think that NTSAD has a responsibility to be able to balance that with realism. And so when we talk about clinical trials and trial timelines and eligibility criteria, or the idea that trials are experiments and that they have risks and we don't even know if they're going to work, that's important. And I think that NTSAD has worked really hard to help give this crucial information to our families so that they can have this information and have some of these expectations while they're hoping for the future. And so I think it's a delicate balance. That said, and I think my favorite thing to say about this is that with each passing year, and especially in the last few years, though, with more and more clinical trials starting, there really are more reasons than ever to be hopeful for our future.
For the sake of time, I do want to throw out one more question before we invite Becky back up or to take over and kick us out. Sarah, I'm going to go to you real fast. What's a thing or two you would say to encourage other families that are walking through some of the ups and downs that you've experienced yourself? How would you encourage others to keep moving forward?
Thanks, Sean. I would say don't be afraid to ask for help. Accepting help is not a sign of weakness. It might actually be one of the bravest things that you can do. Take care of yourself. It doesn't make you selfish. It does not make you a bad parent. You are your child's best advocate, so trust your gut. And then I think I would add, too, that if you're a friend or a family member of someone who has recently been diagnosed and maybe your help has been rejected, or maybe you said something that you wish you wouldn't have said, don't be afraid to try again. Life is messy. We're not always going to get it right, and we all need grace.
I love that. Beautiful. Especially when you talk about taking care of yourself. I look at Kyle and I think, man, take care of that beard, brother. Kevin, same question to you. How do you encourage, or how would you encourage other people that are along a similar journey?
I would suggest kind of keep a little cheat sheet in your mind of the 4 L's, right? Listen, learn, love, and labor. Listen to the needs of your child and your family. Make sure you understand them and you prioritize them. Learn what you can about opportunities that are out there. Love each other and the mission and the journey that you're on. And lastly, and it's a big one, right, is labor. Really work hard to make this vision a reality. I hope that helps everybody.
I love that. I haven't heard that before, so I'll write that down as soon as I can. Staci, let's give you the last word here as the president of the board. How would you encourage others?
I would encourage others with a quote that I really love that comes from Dr. Spock, who is a pediatrician, and that's trust yourself, you know more than you think you do. And this is on the wall over my desk at work as a reminder to myself, and I think it's an important reminder for all of us. So that would be my advice. Trust yourself as a mom or a dad, as a sibling, as a partner, as a patient. Trust that there's a community here. There are people who have been wherever it is that you are now to help you if you need that, or to listen if you need that. And trust that you know and you will know what's best for you and your family. So trust yourself. You know more than you think you do.
We are so thankful to have been part of this group, part of this panel today. We know that we're out of time. We could talk all day with you guys. Absolutely love it and appreciate it. But at this time, we want to introduce NTSAD's Conference and Family Services Coordinator, Becky Benson.
Thank you, Kyle. And just wow, Sean and Kyle, Kevin, Sarah, and Staci. Your contribution is so uplifting and inspiring.
We hope something from this conversation has grabbed your attention and that it's also helped add value to your life as we highlight the families and individuals of NTSAD. As Kyle said, my name is Becky Benson, and I'm the Conference and Family Services Coordinator at NTSAD. My daughter, Miss Elliott, was diagnosed with Taysachs disease in 2009 at the age of 10 months, and she passed away on February 3rd, 2012. Unfortunately, I know firsthand how isolating and deeply painful this journey is. Carrying on my daughter's legacy and helping families who are walking the path of diagnosis is the reason why I continue to serve our rare community, now as a staff member of NTSAD. I have found my tribe through my connection with the parents of this organization. And when I attended my first annual family conference, I knew I was among the small yet mighty community of those who understand. Supporting families that are up against seemingly insurmountable odds is why NTSAD exists and why we facilitate events like the one you've just heard. We look forward to gathering in person again soon. And in the meantime, we'd love for you to visit our website and explore the resources and support systems we have in place at www.ntsad.org. Please consider subscribing to our newsletter while you're there for updates on research and events. Thank you again to Staci, Sarah, and Kevin, and for you for listening to our experiences today.
Thank you for listening to the Two Disabled Dudes podcast. This show is possible with your support. Visit twodisableddudes.com to donate.
Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app.